The American people look to us to direct our nation's might.
My fellow Americans, the long, dark night for America is about to end.
By promoting liberty abroad, we will build a safer world.
I am your voice.
All right, well, it's Convention Week Part 2. We'll see if any of the speeches given over the course of this week stand the test of time. But we already know that from the conventions that have come before this, there have been several speeches that have really reverberated through history. So we thought we would take a look back at a few of them. First up, 1964, the Republican Convention. This was at the Cow Palace. That's what they call the arena in San Francisco. Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona became the Republican nominee. This was a grassroots revolution. I think that's what you really could call it. Nelson Rockefeller, the governor of New York, moderate, almost liberal Republican, had been the favorite, but Barry Goldwater got the nomination because he out-organized, out-hustled Rockefeller. It was a very divided Republican Party. Goldwater was facing an uphill fight in the general election. He was the most conservative nominee the Republican Party at that point had ever put forward, and he embraced that image in his acceptance speech.
Let our republicanism so focused and so dedicated not be made fuzzy and futile by unthinking and stupid labels. I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
All right, next up, let's go to 1976. Had an incumbent, Gerald Ford. He had become the president 2 years earlier when Richard Nixon resigned. And Gerald Ford decided he would run for a full term, and he got challenged by Ronald Reagan. And it was sort of a conservative Reagan versus moderate establishment Gerald Ford primary. Ford got the early advantage. Reagan got hot toward the end. Ford got the nomination. And then to unify the party, he called Reagan to the stage and asked him to deliver a few words. And Reagan stole the show.
I believe the Republican Party has a platform that is a banner of bold, unmistakable colors with no pale pastel shades. We have just heard a call to arms based on that platform, and a call to us to really be successful in communicating and reveal to the American people the difference between this platform and the platform of the opposing party, which is nothing but a revamp and a reissue and a running of a late show of the thing that we've been hearing from them for the last 40 years.
All right, 1988 in New Orleans, George Herbert Walker Bush. He had been the vice president for 8 years under Ronald Reagan. Bush had been the moderate. Reagan had been the conservative. Now he was running for the presidency on his own. By 1988, the Republican Party really was more conservative, and Bush wanted to prove to conservatives that, hey, I'm not that moderate you remember from the old days. I'm one of you now.
My opponent won't rule out raising taxes, but I will, and the Congress will push me to raise taxes, and I'll say no. And they'll push, and I'll say no. And they'll push again, and I'll say to them, read my lips. No new taxes.
And we all know the history of that promise. Of course, a few years later, Bush went back on his word, got defeated for re-election in 1992. How about this? Let's go to 2008, St. Paul, Minnesota. John McCain, the Republican nominee for president. He's got to run against Barack Obama, potentially the first black president. George W. Bush has been president 2 terms. He's very unpopular. McCain, he knows he's behind. He feels he needs something dramatic. And what does he do? He picks the second-year governor of Alaska, Sarah Palin.
I had the privilege of living most of my life in a small town. I was just your average hockey mom and signed up for the PTA. I love those hockey moms. You know, they say the difference between a hockey mom and a pit bull? Lipstick.
Now, of course, Sarah Palin had some troubles on the campaign trail from there. By the end of the campaign, there was a lot of talk that she might be a pretty big liability for John McCain. But what is forgotten is in that moment, at that Republican convention, Sarah Palin looked like a strong political force. So we saw the virtual convention for the Democrats last week. We'll get some version of that this week. We will see how it goes. But again, it'll be a little different from some of those classic clips we just played. How different? We'll see.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.